This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, we do encourage you to like and share them on social media and share them with all your friends as well, because Howard Insurance of Port St. Lucie at this time presents the African American Scene with Rudy Howard.
And good evening, good evening, good evening. Always glad to be with you here on a Wednesday night. My, we have so much stuff going on. First, though, let me just say this. And I know most of my listeners hate her with a passion, but Nancy Pelosi is a badass.
Well, you know, Greg has some stories about her dancing on tables and nightclubs back in the day.
Yes, I know he did, but boy, I'll tell you what, this lady can whipsaw her group together better than Boehner, better than Ryan, and I know there's people right now screaming at the radio because they hate her so much, but let me tell you something. The lady, that's a bad lady. You think about what she did to get the Affordable Care Act passed. She got Democrats to walk the plank. They knew they were going to lose their job if they voted for that, and they did it. And they did it because she led them down the path to get it done. But anyway, and then the other thing I'm going to say before I get into my agenda, I am very proud of President Biden. Do I think he handled this the best way that it could be handled? The answer is no. But I'm proud of him because he has stood up there. He takes the slings and arrows. He doesn't whine, he doesn't cry, and he stands firm in his position for the decision that he made, and I have the ultimate respect for him for doing that. Because far too often, too many politicians, when faced with pressure, cave to the pressure. Yeah. And he has stood strong, and I admire him, and while I wish he had handled this transition a little bit better, he has gotten my total respect for what he did. Because the reality is, we should have been out of there a long time ago. And there's nobody that will dispute that. You can dispute how this is being unbundled, but the fact of us being out of there is something that should have been done. And I welcome your phone call. If this is the first time you ever listen to me, my approach is, if I don't have a guest, I lay out topics, tell you the topics that are on the agenda, and then you're welcome to call up and talk about those topics, because I'll go back to those topics and get into depth for whatever research that I've done about those topics.
There's the key word. Research. Now, before you decide you want to call and just totally disagree with Rudy because he's Rudy, or maybe there might be another reason, but then, of course, if you disagree and you want to call in about that, make sure you do some research, too.
And you know something else, Cliff? I just started going back to the gym, finally, just in the last week.
How long will it take you to get back to bench pressing 475 pounds?
That ain't never going to happen again. That's never going to happen again.
I understand. No
But I'm in the gym, and there's a kid on my block, okay? I've known him since he was probably 5 or 6 years old. So, but he's now EMT. And he came in the gym with a cut-off muscle shirt. And I looked at him and I went, holy mackerel, what the heck you been doing? He said, Unc, I just been exercising and eating right. I said, he calls me Unc. He said, Unc, I just been exercising, eating right. And I just said to myself, Lord, I'm just getting so old. This little bitty kid now is walking around like a junior Hulk. Yeah. Veins popping out of his muscles. I said, oh, boy. And if my sister's listening, she knows exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, but it was good to see him. He looks great. He looks absolutely fantastic. Okay, topics for tonight. Topic number 1. Should we leave Afghanistan? Should we leave Afghanistan? Topic number 2. What are we going to do about voter suppression? Topic number 3. The whitest and blackest places in America.
Ooh.
Topic number 4. This is a good one too. I credit my wife for this one because she pointed me in the direction to this article.
She's doing research too. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
More rich people in China than in America.
I believe that. You ever been to Disney World in the last 10 years or so?
No.
Well, even more than that. I've seen, in fact, the last time I went to Epcot was over maybe about a dozen years ago. But I was wondering if China is a communist nation, how come so many people could come here and go to Disney World? And by golly, they're there.
We'll get into that. I'm gonna tell you,
Okay.
we're gonna get into that, and you know already. Let me just give you the number in case some of those have already struck your fancy. The phone number is 340-1590. That's 340-1590. But we will talk more about that. Topic number 5. Do you agree with Biden's economic agenda? And last topic, do we spend too much money on the military?
Okay.
So there you have it. Those are the 6 topics. Now, if you want to talk about any of those topics that struck a chord with you, please feel free to pick up the phone and call. Even if you wanted to talk about what I said initially about Nancy Pelosi, because I know this being a conservative station mostly, I know most of you hate her with a passion. But listen, she's, to me, you have to look at her like the opposing quarterback on the team you don't like. You may not like the team, but you got to give credit to the quarterback.
In spite of her age.
Right. And that's the case with, but you just have to give her credit. The lady knows how to run the Congress. She knows how to do it. She does it good. Good.
Now, when Ronald Reagan did that, they called him a uniter, not a divider. So that makes her a uniter now instead of a divider, as perceived.
Yeah, but and you know, here's what I think is so amusing. The Republican Party has constantly, in the last 10 years, tried to run every campaign and tag people with, you're a Pelosi supporter, and that was supposed to sink them. And it hasn't.
What has it done to the Republican Party?
Yeah, it hasn't
It's
sunk.
put a few holes in that boat.
Right, she hadn't been sunk yet. So anyway, all right, so listen, should we leave Afghanistan? To me, the answer is yes. An unqualified yes, with an exclamation point behind it. We went there for the right reason, to avenge 9/11. I'm all in on that. But what have we been doing for 20 years?
Policing other countries.
Yeah, we tried to.
That's why we're hated.
Yes, that's exactly why we're
The
hated.
whole world hates us because we don't know how to mind our own business.
Well, and not only that, if we go in and we try to remake people in our own image, and we did that to the Indians, we did that to the slaves when they came here, that we're gonna just remake you and make you be like us, and if you're like us, then you're gonna be okay.
Proselytization and subjugation.
Yeah, and in this case, First of all, think about the arrogance of that. We go in to try to convert a nation that has been around like 20 times longer than America.
And they've been fighting for decades,
Right.
centuries.
Right. So what are we doing? So, and Biden finally had the courage. Obama teetered with the idea, but he failed to pull the trigger. Biden pulled the trigger. And there's no way, I'm telling you, I'm totally all in for people who say this could have been done in a more smooth and more coordinated way. I won't argue that point with you. But there's no way that this was not going to be messy. It was going to be messy no matter what, because after you've been that much time in there, you've created a new set of mores, a new set of standards that people are operating under, and they're watching them disappear in front of their eyes, and they're under sheer panic. You have kids for a generation now. You're talking 20 years. There's a generation of kids in Afghanistan don't know anything about the way things used to be. And now all of a sudden, they got to go back there. That's got to be pretty doggone scary to the parents and the kids. And I'm not even just talking about those that helped us. They're all under an enormous amount of pressure, an enormous amount of reservations about what lies ahead. I certainly would be if I was one of them. But nevertheless, I am sure, without any doubt in my mind, it was the right thing to get out of Afghanistan. If you have a different opinion, I welcome your thoughts. 340-1590. That's 340-1590. What are we going to do about voter suppression? See, I'm going to say to my conservative friends that are listening to me, and I'm going to get you pretty wound up now. I think you're a bunch of wimps. I think you're a bunch of sissies because you're afraid to take on the task of winning the idea. Rather than try to fight by winning the ideas, you want to steal and connive your way to a win. What a wimpy, cowardly way to operate. I want somebody to call up and defend that. You can't defend that to me because that's just being a coward. You don't have the backbone to stand up and challenge the people to accept your ideas by coming up with good ideas. Great. If you don't have good ideas, people are not going to support you. People are not going to support you if you don't have good ideas. So trying to steal people's votes, again, is really a cowardly thing to do. And we have Greg from Stewart. Yes, Greg.
Hey, good. You have really piqued my interest.
I have what?
Really piqued my interest.
Okay.
What is the whitest and blackest spots in America?
Oh. Okay, let me tell you.
I'm asking you this as a white man who has a black fiance.
Oh, okay. Well, let me tell you this. With your black fiance, the two most integrated communities in the United States, guess what, two? Port St. Lucie and Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Wow.
And you can look that up. They just did an article on me in the Christian Science Monitor, and they sought me out because after they did the statistical study, they found that Port St. Lucie and Colorado Springs were the two most integrated communities in the United States.
So Veronica and I are part of that statistic.
I would say.
Oh.
And you know why that is? Because I had a long talk with the guy when he called up to interview me. There really is no, like, if you come from up north and from any of the cities up there, the cities up there have pockets. The Irish neighborhood, the Italian neighborhood, the Polish neighborhood.
French neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah, Cliff's laughing. But in Port St. Lucie, there is no such thing. Right, Greg?
They're all mixed in.
Right. Everybody's all mixed in. On my block. On my.
When we travel, we get grief from both white folks and black folks.
Uh-huh.
Because we're together. We go out to dinner in Port St. Lucie or even Stewart, and we've not one time have we experienced a bad situation where somebody's challenging our choice of mate, you know?
No.
So that stands to very good reason.
Yeah. But let me see.
I appreciate that, man.
Thank
you very much.
Oh yeah, no problem. Glad to make you feel better. Hey, listen, and let me tell you why, Greg. I've got mixed grandkids who I would put my life on the line for. So I'm glad to know that they're in a community that's going to be openly receptive to them.
Absolutely. You know, I don't see people go out of their way to make an issue. I don't see any color, man. I feel love. I feel respect. I feel, and Veronica gets the same in return. And I just don't see any color. But people, some places, go out of their way to make you understand they don't like me hanging out with a black girl, and I don't get it.
Well, and listen, right here in Florida, when you go across the center part of Florida, there's some parts of Florida in the center part that stay still back in the 1950s.
Yeah.
So yeah. But anyway,
so we don't venture that way very often.
No, nuh-uh. Okay.
I like it right here at home, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Okay. Oh, you still
Thanks,
want me? Do you still want me to give you the list? I'll give you a couple real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Looks like we have some evidence that Rudy Howard is changing the world.
I sure hope so.
I've got to know where I can go vacation without getting hassled for having a beautiful black girl on my arm.
Yeah.
I think the only opposition you get to that would probably be jealousy of others.
Yeah. I think you're right, Cliff.
Yeah, let's see. Well, let's see. Real quick. D.C. is one of the blacker states. Now, here's going to surprise you. Mississippi.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a surprise. Isn't that surprising? Georgia, that's not really surprising when you think about the Atlanta area and Louisiana. Now, if you go to the whitest areas, Maine is like 92% white. Vermont is like 91.3% white. New Hampshire's like 91.1% white. West Virginia is 90.9%. And Wyoming is 90.7%. So,
wow.
Yeah. So you can see those are some areas where you might have a very warm reception. But there's a couple of places, though, I got to tell you, I've always wanted to see Mount Rushmore, and I know that's pretty white there, too, but...
So the stones in the mountain.
Yep, that's pretty white, Rudy.
Yeah, but I do want to see Mount Rushmore. That's on my bucket list sometime before I kick out of here. So
Right on.
Well, thank you, sir.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for taking my call.
Okay, alrighty.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're getting a whole new level of calls these days on the
Yeah.
show, you know?
Yeah. That was nice.
Word is getting out.
Yep. Well, I have to tell you that was good. So nobody wanted to take up my response about voter suppression. So, okay. But again, the phone number is 1590.
Yeah, the issues are still out there, and there's 3 more.
Yeah. So the other one here, and we talked about the whitest and black because we did so for Greg. There's more rich people in China than in America.
That blows me away.
That kind of blew me away
Because
too.
all my life they tell me how communist China is. Communist China, communist China. And when there's communism, you know, the first thing that we've been indoctrinated was that communism is bad and everybody's poor and the government's rich.
Yes.
And so, and there are more people in China than the U.S. too.
Yes.
And more rich people there than here.
Yes.
So, how in the world do you explain that away?
Well, here's the thing. And if there's one theme that I have harped on is almost as much as health insurance, it's been that our capitalist system is broken. And here's the stone cold evidence. Now, what most conservatives have told me is that capitalism is not perfect, but there's no system in the world better than capitalism. There's no country in the world when you can get rich like you can under capitalism.
And that's another thing. There's capitalism in China? Of course, it has to be. They've got more rich folks than we do over here. Wow.
The biggest difference, and I can tell you this because of some of the reading I've done, China supports a lot of the economic ventures by some of the manufacturers and developers, and also helps with foreign trade, much more so than the United States.
And who do we go to when we need to borrow money to pay our debt?
Right. And the other thing too is here's the part that kind of blew me away. President Xi of China is in the process of implementing a plan to redistribute wealth because of the growing income inequality in China. As we speak, he is implementing a plan to disperse some of the wealth because of the growing income inequality. Now, I think that's very interesting. You got the president of China who has determined that it is not healthy for the development of the country to have all of the economic power located in a small segment of the country. So we have Sean from Port St. Lucie. Yes, sir.
Hey, Cliff, how you been?
This is
I haven't
Rudy.
talked to
That's
you in
Rudy.
a couple of months.
Okay.
I just have a question for you
Okay.
because you know that I'm like a liberal social person. I was wondering how many tall people are in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine.
I can't answer that.
Well, I don't know whether to visit because I'm 6'5", and I've been to Mount Rushmore, and nobody had a problem with me being 6'5" there. I would say go visit Mount Rushmore because you're an American and you'll have no problems there being African American. And I've been through Mississippi, and I was the only white person I saw in 2 weeks there, and I had no problems there. It's amazing. So again, let's erase it, please.
Well,
I applaud the guy from Stewart. If I see him, I'm not going to look at him funny either if I see him in Stewart, because I live in St. Lucie, and I go to Stewart to restaurants. But please, let's erase it, not make it about that. He's with that woman not because she's black, because she's a nice woman. She's with him not because he's white, but because he's a nice guy that treats her right. So please, let's not interject where you can go in this country based on your race.
well,
You can go
sir.
anywhere you want in
Well,
this country.
sir. Let me say this to you. I would love for that to be the case, but it's not.
It is the case.
No, it's not.
90% of the time. You know what?
It's not.
The
It's
heavy-duty
not.
racists in this country on both sides of the issue, because I've been in East Stewart, okay? I don't know whether you know what I'm talking about.
Sure, I've been to East Stewart many
right.
times.
I had, when I worked in Fort Pierce back in the 80s, I took my employees, I gave them a ride home at 2 o'clock in the morning after they finished work on Avenue D or E or at 13th Street, all right? I know that there are things, both sides, all right? That's not what we want to project as what we believe, all right, that you and I believe. And we don't teach our kids that. We don't not go to Mount Rushmore because we're black, white, Asian, or anything. We go because we're American, all right? And by the way, when you go, and plan it as a trip, because I never thought anything big about it until I stood under it. And I was 17 years old, and I stood up and looked and went, I can't believe that a man had this vision as far as art went, all right? I mean, artistically, it will blow you away.
Well,
All
Sean, I do plan to go, and listen, I know you don't know me, but I am is about as non-prejudiced as you're going to find. But I do understand, to the dismay of many people that do know me, that there is some still existing inequalities in our country that exist. And I just talked about one a few minutes ago. You talk about you don't want us to look at the country in terms of black and white. Why are we doing voter suppression right now? That voter suppression bills that they're mounting, they are targeting black. Well, hold on, let me finish now. They are targeting black and brown people specifically.
How?
How?
I need specifics on how they're targeting.
I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you. When they protested, okay, now just listen, and I'm gonna give you. You want to know? I'm gonna tell you. When they protested the votes as the president having won the election, where did they protest them? They protested them in the predominantly black county in Georgia, in the predominantly mixed county in Arizona, which had the largest amount of black people. They protested the votes in around the city of Philadelphia. They protested there. Now, if there was a problem with the vote and he really was the winner, then why didn't you protest the votes everywhere instead of targeting areas specifically that are black and brown?
All right. Very good. But you started your statement with the voter suppression bill. I'd like to know which bill is going to cause voter suppression.
Well, I think there's several of them. The one in Texas.
Wait. You said the voter suppression bill, all right, and then you started telling me what states and what areas of those states that they were contesting votes, all right? One has nothing to do with the other, but very little to do with the other. Okay.
Well, you don't think they have anything to do with each other? A voter suppression bill is a piece of legislation that gets passed to limit people's amount of their ability to cast a vote. You don't think that is similar?
Exactly right. Add something to that, Rudy. And you and I, we're friends, by the way, whether you know it or not, because we think alike in a lot of ways. All right. Okay. However, you're talking about the bill in in Georgia, obviously, all right, where the biggest controversy over votes was in Arizona, which probably did have some, let's face it, there's voter fraud in every damn election, but, excuse my language, but not to the point of where anybody that is a fair-minded person does not think that the election would have been changed if you'd have found every bit of fraud in the last election. Let's face that. However, the vote to say that you want fair elections in this country, which we have not had since FDR was elected, probably since the country was conceived, as far as completely pure fair elections, all right? I mean, let's face it, 1/3 of a person for Congress? That's the way black people were in the Constitution? Is that fair? No, it got changed, okay? So let's look forward. If you're telling me that you have to bring an ID in to vote, and that is voter suppression, then you've lost me, Rudy, because black people can go in, Chinese people can go in, Hispanic people can go in and get a voter ID with a state ID. They are that smart. And if you're going to tell me that is voter suppression, then I've lost respect for you.
Oh,
okay?
well, let me tell you where I am on that. I have modified my position on that because the reason I have modified is if that was the only thing that they wanted from people to vote, I could be satisfied with that. But let me tell you why I have felt in the past pretty strong about that. I had an aunt and an uncle, God rest their soul, and no longer here. And if my sister was listening, she would tell you the same thing, that lived in Brooklyn. They never had a driver's license ever because they did not drive. They had no voter ID. And I'm going to just say this, Sean. You might find this hard to believe. I don't know where you're from originally, but if you live in Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, it is not uncommon for people to not have a license because public transportation, you can go anywhere you want to go in the city.
Do you know what a state ID is?
Sure I do.
I've had 300 people work for me as employees before.
But I have surrendered. I have surrendered. You can't. It's no point in beating me down on that because I've already told you I have surrendered on that because I feel like if that was the only issue, I could live with that as a means of making sure that the election is secure.
If I'm sitting at happy hour next to an African American and they say, I don't have a license, I can't vote, guess what? I'm going to educate them. I'm going to tell them, you can get a state ID, you can register to vote, you can bring that state ID in. I don't care. To me, I'm more liberal than that. Bring a freaking library card, something to prove who you are, okay?
But they won't accept that, though.
There are many things, I know. There are many things in this country that you can't do without an ID. Voting should be sacrosanct with us. We need to take back over our government on both sides. Let them start using both sides against each other, and let's come to some common ground here. If you want to start a movement, I'll join you. I will march with you. I will go to Avenue D. I will register people to vote with you. I'll march down the street with you if we get them registered with IDs, because guess what? I've seen it firsthand. I have seen voter fraud firsthand. I kept my mouth shut because guess what? It doesn't do any good. All right? Your and my vote don't mean as much if you see it firsthand. So the things that are blocking, quote unquote, blocking people from voting are overcome by amendments that were put into the Constitution that gave African Americans the right to vote. You're not 1/3 of a person, according to the Constitution anymore. You are a whole person. People that don't believe that, they don't matter. They're going to be gone in another 30 years. The old people are dying that still hang on to those ideals, all right? So let's not say it's voter suppression. Let's make the system correct so that there isn't voter suppression. Because guess what?
But Sean, that's the whole
If
point.
you're letting
The whole
somebody
point, Sean, is if we do not have legislation which corrects some of the impropriety that's taking place with some of these bills in Georgia and Texas and even here in Florida, we are going to have an improper allocation of votes due to voter suppression. It's that simple. And if there is no amount of organization that will overcome voter suppression if the things that they do are allowed to exist. Let's just take, I'm going to give you just one example of something that Texas removed that made no sense at all. Houston, the executive in the county where Houston's located, came up with an innovative idea for drive-through voting. Not one scintilla of fraud was discovered in the drive-through voting. But they're doing away with it. And you know why?
Was there photo ID?
Well, yes, because it was too successful. They didn't like the fact that that many people were able to vote without any obstruction. Look it up. Don't take my word for it.
Now, I want to ask you, it's in the bill that in Texas that says that you can't vote if you have a voter ID.
Well, come on now.
Did it say
Come on, Sean. Come on.
So these people who would drive, but you said that voter ID, is that blocked in your mind?
No.
Do you think people should have an ID to vote?
I don't. I have already told you. Now I'm going to tell you again for the third time. I'm going to tell you for the third time. I have already said I have surrendered the idea of voter ID. If that was the only thing that they wanted to do was to make sure everybody had an ID to vote, while I still think it's a problem searching for a solution, I would support that if that was the only thing. But that's not the only thing. The idea is to try to limit the amount of people that are able to come to the polls. That's anti-American.
You know what? And that goes on both sides, by the way.
Did you hear what they discovered the other night, where they put a $5 million fine on a guy? Did you hear about that? There was a group in Illinois that created bogus phone calls to call African Americans and tell them that if they came to the polls, that it would put their ID to the police and they would run the risk of being arrested. I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to look it up. They got a $5 million fine for doing that.
I actually do take your word for it. All right. There's also, and I want you to slow down a little bit because I'm going to explain what I'm going to explain to you. All right. There's also Afghans beheading people because they're infidels. Okay. So things happen. But you and I need to come to some common ground here and say, okay, we want every single person in this United States that wants to vote to be able to vote legally. They have the right under the Constitution. All right. You and I both agree that we want every single person in this country that's alive, not like, the dead people that vote in Chicago, which is an old story, every year to vote. All right. I have voted I'm 61 years old, and I hate to tell you, but I have not missed a primary since I was 18 years old. All right. Let's get people excited that way. Let's get people educated. Let's get people knowing how to go vote. It's like every story about the American struggle. All right. Educate people on how to do things they want to do, and they will be able to do it. These laws that are being passed are overreactions from one side. You can call them rednecks, conservatives, whatever you want to call them, all right, from something that happened. The same thing happens on the left overreaction, and they do the same thing. Let's find, as a community, the middle ground that says, no, this is written in stone. We have the right to vote. We have the right to make our vote count. How would you feel if all of a sudden you found out in the next election, no matter who gets elected, all right, that 75 million people voted for one candidate, 80 million voted for the other, and they found out that over 250 million of the people that voted for the other candidate were white, and they voted twice. That would piss you off. Excuse my language again. All right? It would make you very mad. All right? So what we have to agree on is that every single vote counts. My next door neighbor, who's African American, his vote should count exactly the same as mine, no matter who he votes for.
So
right?
how could what's the argument?
The argument is nothing except for the fact that you and I know that we erase all the garbage, the political garbage that is in these bills, and say only the thing that we care about is we know that person A is going in to vote, not and has the right to vote. All right, we can discuss the fringes, felons or illegal aliens or whatever. That's another discussion. But if you come in and you have a valid ID, and by God, I told you, I will go out and stuff for people to get valid IDs.
I got you.
All right? Get a valid ID so you can be verified. All right? I went to vote right after I moved in the last primary. Well, not the last primary, but a couple of primaries ago. Right after I moved, I realized I didn't change the address on my driver's license, and I had the wrong voting precinct. And I went to my old voting precinct, and I said, what do I need to do? And she goes, you need to go, blah, blah, blah. We
Greg,
whatever.
I got to move you along.
I know, because it's a thing.
Okay.
You know what? I went out of my way to find a place where I could vote in my primary. It wasn't even a big, huge election. I was voting for dog catcher, whatever. All right?
Okay.
So let's get together and say, let's enable. Let's get rid of the people that are trying to suppress the vote. Because guess what? In the Constitution, it doesn't suppress it.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Appreciate your call.
Right.
Okay.
Take care.
All right.
We got two other topics there that you.
I know. We're not going
He
to
has
get to
some
them.
great
Yeah.
points there.
That always happens. It seems like it, yeah.
We got such a good quality of calls these days.
Yeah. Do you agree with Biden's economic agenda? Do you agree with Biden's economic agenda? He's got. There's some people are saying it is on par with President Johnson's Great Society program that he brought forth. I would say to you that I am for it, wholeheartedly for it. We have not made an adequate investment in the American people, and it's long overdue. I do a Friday night phone call with guys from college, and we've been doing this now, started during COVID, and it's coming up on a year. Every Friday night we do this phone call. And one of the guys that is now part of our group is from Denmark. And he has to get up like 3 o'clock in the morning to participate because our phone call is at 7 o'clock on Friday nights. And I often ask him when various and sundry issues come up, what it's like in Denmark. And he's originally from Boston. And he was a lawyer in New York City that is now living in Denmark. And some of the differences are like amazing. Like one of the things that he told me about is with the mask, there is no objection about masks in Denmark. You have to have the mask. period. No discussion. So it's kind of interesting to hear him give me his perspective about things in Denmark. And he also talks about the health care, where he always gets complete health care as now being a resident of Denmark. And we got Winnie on line one. Good morning. Good afternoon, Winnie. Good evening.
Good afternoon, my friend.
How you been?
Bogus, $5 million fine about the voters. It's how what people call the people to distract us from voters, black and brown people.
You gotta get you closer to the phone. I can't hear you.
Oh, you were saying something about voters.
Oh yes.
People calling people about the bogus. It was $5 million.
Yes.
Let's hear about it.
Oh yeah, it was in Illinois. And they did an investigation. This group, it was two guys. They made a robocall, and in the robocall, it was a voice that was telling black people, although it didn't say black people in the recording, but the recording was targeted at all black precincts. And in the recording, it would tell people that if you come to the polls, they would gather your information, and there's a good possibility that you could go to jail if you come in to vote at the precinct. Well, they investigated that, and they found out that was absolutely targeted. And I know some people looking it up now. I want you to, because you should know by now. If I tell you this on the radio, there's some truth to it. And they did that investigation, and they fined those guys $5 million, biggest fine that I know of for that kind of thing, for voter fraud, misrepresentation.
Threatening people with background checks.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that awful?
It is awful. What about the John Lewis voters? They try to restart that. Something about John Lewis, voters.
Winnie, I think we're going to get it. I pray to God we're going to get it. I think we are. It passed the House. I know most people are saying that the Senate is not going to go along with it, but I sure do hope so. There is really no reason not to pass the voting rights bill.
I'm definitely right about that. Talking about black and brown people.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
We got some bad cut down to Trump laws, and they didn't let them very dead.
Yeah.
They find another way to try to target black and brown people for voters. That's terrible. Y'all have a good night. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you, Winnie.
Thanks, Winnie.
Well, I got to tell you, I think I have done so much reading about this. And Angry White Men, I read that with Michael, whatever his name is, I can't remember his name. And then I read another book recently on a very similar topic, trying to figure out why it is that people are so angry and what has caused an eruption in race relations. And what I am finding in all of the reading and the research that I keep doing, trying to look for an answer, is that there's a group of people that feel left out. And they are used to being in the driver's seat all the time. And sometimes now they're not in the driver's seat. And because they're not in the driver's seat, they feel like somehow they're being cheated. And You know what I'm saying?
I don't have control over everybody. Depression is what that is.
It is.
Wow.
So what it is that you got folks that have said they've had and this is a word that really upsets a lot of people. They've had the white privilege that they didn't even understand that they've had. And I've read at least 3 books that were written by white people that said, I didn't even realize for most of my life that I had the white privilege. Well, what's happening now because of the mixing of our country and everything becoming so much more diverse, some of the natural privileges, I'm doing my psychology thing now, some of the natural privileges that accrued to people no longer accrue to them automatically anymore. They just don't. And if you're on that side, you feel somehow that something's been taken from you, other than the fact that maybe you have to compete for it now, and in the past you didn't have to compete for it.
There is something we need to take away.
Yeah, well,
The desire to lord over people. I'll put it that way.
I think that's an innate thing, human thing, that people want to always feel that they're above other people.
Yeah.
And I think what we have now is people feeling honestly, and some of my friends tell me sometimes that I'm just too pragmatic and I give people the benefit of doubt when maybe I shouldn't. But I think it's just a thing that people are going through. They see things slipping away from their grasp, and that's what it's all about. That's what voter suppression is. That's what voter suppression is all about. They find the political power is slipping from their hands, but they're going about it the wrong way. They could still win the political power, but because they feel it's slipping, they're not willing to let it go without a fight. So they'd rather steal it from you than fight to win it. And that's why I call them cowards and wimps, because there's a way to win it without trying to steal it. But you steal it because you don't want to do the work. It's lazy. You're being lazy. You don't want to do the work that it takes to win people over to your side. And you could do that. But I do understand emotionally, because I've invested so much time in reading and doing research that I really get it, where folks are and what their frustration is. And I certainly understand what this voter suppression is all about. But from my perspective, I can't let you do that to me. I can't let you do that to me. People died. People took beatings in order to get the right to vote. And I can't let you take that from me like that. I just can't. I won't let you. If I can help it, I'm not going to allow you to. Because that's just too important. And that's not just black people. White people died trying to help black and brown people get the right to vote. You should be upset about that too. So I'll tell you, that's we end on a Rudy rant.
Hey, way to go.
But in any event, listen, I hope you enjoyed the show as I presented to you today. And I'm still on the hunt to try to get EJ and Shannon on my show. And I'll try to get them for next week because the primary is coming up real soon. But I'd like to thank you so much for listening to the African American scene. God bless and be safe. And I will see you next Wednesday right here for the African American scene.
Archives of the African American scene can be found on YouTube. Go to WPSLTV.com and listen to Rudy Howard's African American scene every Wednesday evening in the 6 o'clock hour. This is WPSL, Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.